The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Training Camp Confidential, day number 7 of training camp in the books. Commanders had a whale of a practice today. We'll talk about all of the things that went down. Pads fully back on today. Run game and offensive line made a statement at practice today. We've talked about the struggles up front, and I've always thrown in the caveat of make sure that you build into that conversation that there's been a lot of, moving parts with Laramie Tunsil being out of practice, which means Andrew Wiley goes to left tackle and Josh Connolly's at right tackle. And so you had to also kind of take that into consideration. This was the first full padded practice that Laramie Tunsil, because we've only had 2. The team has only had 2 rather. And so this is the first time that he had been involved in a padded practice. The offensive line, and it makes sense that now the offensive line looks a lot better in this padded practice. So we're going to talk about the offensive line. We're going to talk about the run game. We're going to talk about the defensive back depth and how that continues to shine, as that was one of the things that it also was on full display today. We'll talk about some guys that are taking advantage of some opportunities and others who are not. And just talk about the overall depth and competition that this team is putting forth right now. So a lot of good takeaways from day number 7 of practice. But as we always do on Training Camp Confidential, let's go ahead and do some house cleaning. So we're going to start off with a little bit of news that happened yesterday. So as we know, we talked about this a couple of days ago. Nate Herbig retired, which freed up a roster spot amongst the 90-man roster that you have in training camp. So in order to fill the void left by Herbig's sudden retirement, the team went out and signed offensive tackle Lucas Niang, former 3rd-round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs out of TCU back in 2020. He started some games in this league at tackle. Again, more of a camp body. You got to find ways to fill out your roster. Maybe this is a guy that they want to continue to work with and develop, similar to what we saw from Tyree Phillips, right? The guy that they had the tryout with and ended up signing. And, he's not going to make this team, obviously, but is it a guy that you can continue to work with and maybe, resurrect their career? Anytime you're talking about a former 3rd-round pick, as Niang or Tyree Phillips were in their respective drafts, that means there's some talent there. Now, can you get that out of them? I mean, it could be a Mekhi Becton type situation. We saw Philadelphia last year where you resurrect a career, or maybe if you recall, if you've been a fan long enough, Eric Flowers, once upon a time, former 1st-round pick of the Giants, didn't work out. And then we bring him here, move him over to guard, and he ends up having, a solid end to what was a very disappointing start to his career. So we'll see what happens with Lucas Niang. I'm not putting a lot of stock into this, but you just never know what one of these signings could turn into. As we continue to try to build this roster, you're just never sure. And I got confidence in O-line Bobby Johnson. So we'll see. We'll see how all of this works out. But Lucas Niang fills that 90th spot on the roster that was vacated by one Nate Herbig. Also, a piece of news today, head coach Dan Quinn started out his press conference talking about the activation of guard Timothy McKay. As you can see here, he was on the non-football injury list because he tore his pec. So keep in mind, this was the guy that they spent the most money on of any of the undrafted free agents after the draft, right? He was the guy they spent the most money on. Keep in mind, I wasn't the biggest fan of his game. But again, because I don't love him doesn't mean that they can't get something out of him. And I've talked about some of those guys that have a chance to, be impact players potentially 2-3 years down the road. And McKay was one of those guys that they're really excited about. And this is the guy that had a chance to be, a lot of people think he was going to be a mid-round selection, third round, even potentially a day 2 guy, but definitely somewhere in that 4th, no later than 5th round range. But there are people talking about Timothy McKay coming off the board potentially in the 3rd, 4th round. He tears his pec during the draft process, lifting weights on the bench. And so that pretty much made him undraftable. The Commanders take advantage of this opportunity, and you could be getting yourself a starting caliber offensive lineman here. They're excited, and DQ talked about it. He led his press conference off talking about how excited he and the staff are to get McKay back onto the field. He's going to start working his way back into team activities and drills. So they are very excited. And so that's another piece of news as we get through with the house cleaning portion of the show. So now let's talk about day 7 of practice. A lot to get to. Off day for Marshawn Lattimore as they continue to, and DQ talked about that. We'll talk more about it when we get to what DQ had to say today. But he had the day off, and so that gave an opportunity to some of the other guys at the cornerback position, Noah Igbenogany among others, who took advantage of those opportunities to be out there and continues to shine. The defensive back depth is something that I think we're starting to really see present itself in a manner that maybe we weren't sure it was going, because there were questions about the safety position, and there still may be. You know, we haven't seen them in the joint practice setting. We haven't seen them in the preseason. All looks good right now, but I think Tyler Owens is a guy that they're excited about. He got some more first-team reps with the defense, did Owens again today, and they're moving him all around. Noah Igbenogany got some reps today, was outstanding again to go along with Mikey's, ascension. Trey Amos continuing to be, a guy that we are so excited about as a rookie on the boundary. So this is really forming to be this really strong group. And then again, we talked about Quan Martin and him continuing to develop, and Will Harris is going to be a solid piece. All of a sudden, defensively in that backfield doesn't seem like it's that much of a weakness, especially when you're talking safety position. So another really solid day for the secondary, right? Jalen Lane stood out today as a guy that got some first-team reps. They used him in ghost motion. They were a lot of red zone today. So, the field is condensed, and DQ talked about that. You're not so much worried about the ball going over your head. Now you got to start working, the field, not horizontally and vertically, but laterally, right? Side to side, sideline to sideline. And so guys like Jalen Lane now come into play a little bit more. He got some reps. He made some plays today. Sam Hartman also shined today at practice. Because remember, I've been talking about, is there a third quarterback competition? And I really feel like it's Hartman's. I mean, Josh Johnson's 39 years old. Like, you're not going to cut Sam Hartman if you feel good about him and expose him to the rest of the league, and for a 39-year-old Josh Johnson, right? Like, if you believe in Sam Hartman, and I think this group believes in Sam Hartman, he was here last year, so he should be more comfortable in the system because he's got a second year, much like Jayden and Marcus. If you believe in Sam, then he should be your third quarterback. And I think we're starting to see him take those steps to be the third quarterback without question, right? And maybe that was the play all along. He was always going to be QB3, but he had himself a really good day. Had some connections with Jalen Lane and some other guys, and so he looked good today and continues to be rather sharp in this preseason or in the training camp. I think he had one or two practices where it was a little bit shaky, but for the most part, Sam Hartman has looked good. But today was all about the run game. It was about the offensive line making a statement and saying, hey, we heard your shit. We heard your jokes. We heard you talking shit, Louie T and others, about how the run game has been spotty at best. The pass protection hasn't been its greatest, and they're not opening up holes. It's not looking that much different than last year's group towards the end of the season. The D-line is dominating this offensive line, yada, yada, yada. And they came out and they made a statement today. And the offensive line created holes for these running backs. Chris Rodriguez had a big run today. Bill had multiple massive runs today, one off the left side where he took off down the sideline. Would have been a massive gain. He continues to impress. I think we're getting to the point of Bill mania here, right? Like it's getting to that crescendo-like level now, to the point where we got to see it against somebody else, because I think we all want to believe that this is the future of the running back position. I've said that multiple times. I think a lot of you feel that way as well. But it's easy to get caught in that. Well, he's a 7th round pick. That's the easy, low-hanging fruit. This guy is the real deal, and he continues to show that in practice. The offensive line created space today. They allowed Jayden to operate. He was sharp again today. He continues to build his connection with Deebo Samuel, who had another touchdown catch today. In typical Deebo Samuel fashion, get him out in space, out into the flats, dump it to him. One man to beat, and Noah Igbenogany. He beats him, gets to the end zone, touchdown. Also, Zach Ertz continues to be a red zone machine and monster. Him and Jayden continuing to build on last year's success and rapport. He was absolutely sparkling today in practice, was Zach Ertz, with multiple touchdown catches from Jayden Daniels in the red zone period. So today was a really big day for the offensive line. Laramie Tunsil back at left tackle. Andrew Wiley took most of the reps at right tackle. The offensive line was so much better today, opening up holes, being dominant at times. Javon Kinlaw had a strong practice as well. There was one play, I think it was the first play of the red zone period, where he jumps into the backfield and is immediately there to blow the play up. And it's plays like that where people, like, you see why Adam Peters and Daryl Tapp and all of those guys vouched for him, wanted him here, and were willing to give him what they ultimately paid him, which a lot of people felt like it was an overpay. So you like to see the defense getting their share of wins, but it was about the offensive line, and they needed one of these days. We needed to hear that they had one of these days, because it always been defense, defensive line dominating the offensive line. So for the offensive line to come out, establish themselves, make a statement today, which I'm not surprised by, because again, Laramie Tunsil was in the lineup. It's the same thing I talk about with Terry McLaurin and having a true number one wide receiver and what that does for the rest of your group. Having that number one receiver properly slots everyone else. When Laramie Tunsil, who's your number one offensive lineman, is not in the lineup, everything is now out of whack, because you don't have that guy. So now, instead of Andrew Wiley being a right tackle, which is where we're more comfortable with him being if he has to play, he's got to go to left tackle, which is a disaster for us. And now you've weakened two positions, essentially, because we don't know if Josh Connolly Jr. is ready for that type of action yet, right? So now he's in at right tackle. You got Wiley at left tackle. Now that's a mess, right? Because you're trying to figure out, this is a lot of moving parts. Coleman's still getting his feet wet at left guard. And so it's a lot, right? You insert Tunsil back into this lineup. He's able to then provide a little bit more stability next to Brandon Coleman. And now all of a sudden that left side feels like it's, where it needs to be. We know what we're getting out of Biotish. He's the one constant that remains on the offensive line, it feels like, at all times. Then you got the right side, where Allegretti and Wiley are next to each other, and that's a formidable group. Like, they can take care of business there. And so it's a much better lineup when Laramie Tunsil is inserted. It feels like everything just starts to fit into place, right? So it's good to see the offensive line take care of business. And also returning punts today, Jalen Lane, Kaz Allen, KJ Osborne, and Demetric Felton were all back fielding punts. So I went back. I think I said this the other day when we talked about this. I think I'm leaning towards KJ Osborne, even if he doesn't make this roster, being on the practice squad. And again, we'll see if he can, if another team gives him an opportunity to be on their roster. But I think they're leaning towards him being the de facto default fallback option if anything were to happen to Jalen Lane. Osborne feels like the guy. I can't see a scenario where Kaz Allen is going to be promoted, right? I think it feels like KJ Osborne at this point. Demetric Felton, same deal, right? I just don't see a situation where you bring up another running back to field punts. It just feels like another receiver would be tasked with doing that, because if something happens to Lane, you're losing a receiver and you're going to add another one back into the mix, if that makes sense. So feels like KJ Osborne's your backup option at punt returner, but we'll see how that continues to play itself out. And obviously in the preseason, we'll see, who's fielding punts and how does it look. And that might go a long way in determining that as well. So just a couple of more updates. Dom Hampton and Kay Medrano took reps with the second team defense today. Those guys have been running with the threes for much of camp. They were running with the twos today. So you're seeing guys getting shifted around. They're putting more on the plates of some of these young players and seeing how they handle different situations. DQ talked about this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to his press conference. I thought it was a really good press conference from DQ today as well, in addition to hearing from Jayden Daniels at the podium, which is always a treat. He talked about them being in situations now. They're moving sort of closer to the point where they're going to start repping those situations, like 29 seconds left, no timeouts, putting the team in these stressful, high leverage situations and seeing how the guys respond. So to see the young guys like Dom Hampton, like Kay Medrano getting opportunities with that second unit means that they're starting to feel more comfortable with these guys, and they're putting them in situations to see how they respond. And I want to see how they continue to respond to these opportunities, because, again, it's working up towards something. It's building up towards those joint practices with the Patriots. It's building up to that first preseason game against New England. And then the next week, where I think you're going to see a lot. I do think you're going to see the starters, even if it's a series against Cincinnati. I do think you're going to see them in that Monday night game, right? So I want to see what these guys continue to do. The linebacker position is really interesting. It's a really interesting group. We don't talk enough about these linebackers, and we've gotten so much more athletic at the line. We were slow last year at linebacker. Who am I kidding? Like, we were not an athletic team at the linebacker position. It was really frustrating at times. We went from being a slow linebacker group last year to a very athletic group, with Dom Hampton officially joining the group this year, McGee being back from injury, and adding Kay Medrano. All of a sudden, you went from that being one of your slower positions on the roster to all of a sudden being one of the more athletically gifted, positions on this roster. So love to see it. Want to see these guys can continue to grow and develop and get opportunities. So today was a really good day of practice, really tough physical practice by all accounts from the people that I've either spoken to or things that I've seen on X. And this is the kind of work you want to see the team continue to get out of these practices. One of the better practices of camp to this point, to be honest with you. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to what was said at the podium today. And DQ started off his press conference by talking about the competition that was going to take place at practice today. Remember, his press conference is always before practice, and then the player press conferences are after practice. So he talked about what practice was going to look like today, and he was like, today was going to be all about competition. They're going to have a point system, like, 3 points for this, and if you force the offense to have to kick a field goal, a certain amount of points for the defense, certain amount of points for the offense, and if you score a touchdown, certain amount of points here. And so there's going to be a point system that they were going to utilize in trying to incentivize the players to get those competitive juices flowing. So he also talked about Tim McKay was something else he led off his press conference with, that he's going to be hitting the field, ramping him back up, right? They're not going to miss a step. You already know, from his pec injury. They're excited. I talked about that already when we did our house cleaning. So he hit the field for the first time. They removed him from the non-football injury list. Now he's active. And then we're going to see if Tim McKay can be ready in time for the first Patriots for the preseason game. I doubt it. And so maybe we'll see him. Let's hope he's ready for the Patriots game. I still think there's a considerable amount of time. He may be able to get himself onto the field. I'm more so thinking it's Cincinnati that he'll be ready for that second preseason game where you start to really see him get his feet wet. But well, we'll see, right? He was asked about Laramie Tunsil's impact on Josh Connolly Jr. And he said that he compared it to the relationship that he saw last year between Marcus and Jayden. I thought it was a great comparison. And he felt like Marcus, and we all talked about this last year, Marcus's impact on Jayden cannot be undersold and understated. Like, there was so much that Jayden learned from Mariota. And we all remember, it's an indelible clip that's etched into my memory bank. That Atlanta Falcons Sunday night game to clinch the postseason at birth. And, you know, Jayden's tired, dog-ass tired. We call it timeout because the dude is literally putting it all out there for us to get us into the end zone, to win us this game in overtime. And he's hunched over, you know, taking a knee, and Marcus comes out and tells him, you know, get up, get your win, you know, use your God-given ability to go win us this football game. And that relationship that those two fostered last year, and how much Jayden learned and grew from Marcus's presence, it's invaluable. And he says he feels that same kind of relationship. He's like, every time you look up, Josh Connolly is talking to Laramie Tunsil. They're always around each other because he wants to be a sponge and soak up as much information that he can from Tunsil. And you can see Tunsil pouring into him. And so that's awesome. That's what you want. That's the brotherhood at its best. And that's what they fostered here in Washington. And that's why this team won 12 games last year. We weren't the most talented, but we had a brotherhood that they were able to cultivate, and it helped us win games. And they're hoping to recreate that again this year with more talent this time around. He talked about Mikey's confidence growing and him emerging as a leader. He said the biggest thing, like, Mikey, it's not a talent thing. Like, they asked him where's the biggest growth that they've seen, you know, he's seen from Mikey this year. And he's like, talent-wise, Mikey figured it out last year. So I already knew what it was going to be this year. You know, he's going back to nickel. So, you know, you want to see him go in there and thrive. But we already knew what he was about. We drafted him to be a nickel. So we already knew he was going to go in there and ball. He said, you know, you see the play where he makes the one-handed interception, you know, on the play down the post. And he's like, you could see the growth there of him just, you know, seeing things and making plays. But he's like, the biggest growth is him emerging as a leader. Like, this is a guy that you can see now taking ownership of his role on this team and knowing that his voice has a little bit more weight to it, being a second-year player and playing at the level that he has been. And so he said he's really appreciating the growth in Mikey and the steps he's taken to become a bigger leader on this team. They talked about Marshawn Lattimore, or DQ talked about Marshawn Lattimore, and he said that Marshawn's health is the most important thing. Like, he said he's making plays out here, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, he's one of the keys to what we want to do defensively. And the thing that we have to have with him is health. Everything else will take care of itself. If he's healthy, we know he's going to do the things that we know he's capable of doing. It's just about getting him to the starting line, right? Getting him there healthy and then keeping him healthy. And so he had a vet rest day today. He said, we're going to take it slow with him. You know, he's been out there. We love what we've seen from him, but we also got to make sure we don't, you know, push him too hard. We want to make sure we're taking all the right steps to make sure we get him where he needs to be when we need him to be there. So that's an important thing. Keeping him healthy is the biggest thing for Marshawn Lattimore. I think we've all said that, and we all feel that way. The biggest ability for him is availability. If he's healthy, I feel like he's going to have that bounce back year, but he's just got to be healthy, right? And that's pretty much what DQ said. He talked about shifting around the wide receiver room in Terry's absence. You know, again, it's the same conversation that we've had over and over again about guys taking advantage of opportunities, and a lot of guys haven't. And DQ didn't really, like, he didn't go out of his way to talk about one or two guys that have taken advantage. He just said it's an opportunity, you know, and he said we don't really, you know, move the outside guys around a lot. The outside positions are essentially the same in this offense. So he said the slot is the one that moves around a lot. The tight ends move around a little bit, but he's like, you know, you get into the red zone and there's a little bit more movement and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, there are opportunities. You know, with Terry not being out on the field, there are opportunities, and we'll see who takes advantage of them. He talked about Jayden's leadership and the importance of his voice. And he said it's not as much Jayden getting on somebody after a play or you know, Jayden correcting someone. It's more of communication. And he gave a couple of examples. We talked about one of those examples a couple of days ago with Ben Sinnott. There was a blitz. Jayden was able to identify the blitz, communicate that to Sinnott. Sinnott was on the same page. The route gets run perfectly, a dot to him, big gain. After the play, Jayden seen talking to Ben Sinnott, and it was basically Jayden communicating to him, hell of a job. Like, we were on the same page. You executed that beautifully. That's the type of time we got to be on, right? And so it's not always Jayden going up to somebody after a missed opportunity and saying this or that. It's more of, hey, what did you see here? And we've heard Jayden say that before. And so DQ is like, he loves his growth and maturation in that regard, you know, communicating to his teammates, you know, hey, I want you to come flatter on this route next time, or hey, my fault. Like, you ran that route perfectly. I got to give you a better ball. That's on me. So he talked about the leadership and the communication he's seen from Jayden in year number 2. DQ talked about how moving up practice an hour, because basically they've been running from the heat, which is a good thing. You don't want anybody out here passing out. It's been hot, man. This summer has been hot. It's been humid, and they've tried to get in and out before the heat really reaches that climax of the day. You're talking noon to about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, where it's, you know, really the hottest portion of the day. You don't want the guys out there, you know, enduring that. So he's talked about moving practice up an hour and the impact and the benefits of doing that. And he said that it's hard pulling that off. It's a lot of people that are involved in making that come to fruition, but he's been really happy with how receptive the players have been. He said it's all about the players, right? It's all about, you know, having these guys be in the best conditions possible so that they can be successful. And so I think it was a great gesture on his part. You know, some people, oh, these players are soft. Bullshit. It's hot. Get in, get out, get your work in, and get out. Like, you don't need to have these. And I know the media loves it too. They're like, yo, we don't really need to be out here, you know, hot as shit. And so they appreciate it as well. And he talked about, you know, guys getting to go home earlier. It's, you move everything up an hour, guys get to go home an hour earlier. It's a win for everybody, right? Really. Maybe this is something they do on a permanent basis. Maybe it isn't, right? But it's working out right now. He talked about red zone work and the importance of red zone work and how beneficial red zone is. He said, you know, today they were going to work on, you know, man concepts in the red zone. He said there are other days where they work on zone concepts, because obviously those look different. You know, you got your zone beaters versus your man beaters. So you're working on different aspects. He's like, remember, you don't have to worry about the ball going over your head because the field is condensed at that point. So there's a lot of things that you work on. He talked about working on the run game in the red zone, which I think is so vital. Now, people don't talk about this enough. I've always told you guys the best offenses in the red zone are the ones that can run the football into the end zone. It's so hard to consistently throw the football into the end zone because of that condensed nature of the field and how the bodies are all on top of each other. It feels like everybody is close to one another. You got to make perfect throws in the red zone. It just becomes so tough. If you can run the football successfully, it opens up everything. And so he talked about the importance of being able to run it. And he's like, we start 1st and 9, right? 1st and goal from the 9. And every play is a run play, and you got to try to run it in, and the defense has to try to get a stop, and they give out points. If they're able to force a stop, if the offense gets in, they get points. And so fueling that competition, but also getting the reps that are necessary in the red zone. That's how you put up points in this league, scoring in the red zone. We didn't have a lot of big plays last year. I've talked about this. That's something that we have to increase this year, is more big plays. But we scored a ton of points last year. Why? Because we were very proficient in the red zone. When we got down there, for the most part, we were putting the football in the end zone. There weren't a lot of empty drives. We went for it on fourth down. We generally got it down there. There weren't a lot of, damn, we got to settle for a 34-yard field goal, right? There were only early in the season was that an issue, right? The Giants game comes to mind. The Bears game was another one where we shot ourselves in the foot with penalties and had to settle for field goals, and that almost bit us in the ass. But outside of those two games, for the most part, we got down there, got the ball in the end zone, and that's very important. He was asked about the second-year player who has stuck out to him the most. And, DQ ain't going to do that shit. He's like, I don't know about the most. But, some guys, second-year guys have stuck out, right? And he first talked about BC, Brandon Coleman, and, the transition to guard and how he's looked and how he's taken to the position and how they're pleased with what they've seen from him as he transitions to left guard. And then he talked about Jayden McGee, and he said, man, we love this guy as a blitzer. We loved what we've seen from him as a blitzer, and that got me excited. I talked about the linebacker group earlier and how we don't talk enough about the linebackers and the athleticism of that group. And one of the things that McGee did so well coming out of Temple was he blitzed. He's a guy that attacked the line of scrimmage from a run blitzing standpoint, from a pass blitzing standpoint, a guy that was constantly in the backfield. And I said, this is something that we could utilize. Him as a blitzer. Everybody wants to talk about him stopping the run and him in coverage. How about him getting to the quarterback? Right? We saw a lot of Bobby Wagner blitzing last year. That could be Jayden McGee this year, right? And he said he is a blitzer, but he may be able to be a rusher. And DQ said, what's the difference, right? He said a rusher is a guy that you're not going to see a running back blocking. Like you're not going to see Von Miller being blocked by a running back because he's a rusher, right? The tackle has to account for him. So when they talk about identifying the mic, right, all that does is tell the offensive line who they are accountable for, right, who they have to block. And you want known rushers blocked by offensive linemen. You do not want a rusher. You don't want TJ Watt on a running back. That's a big mismatch. That's going to lead to destruction. So a rusher is going to be blocked by an offensive lineman, more likely a tackle. A blitzer, he's going to get picked up by a running back more likely than that. So he's like, can he turn into a rusher? We feel like this guy's in a phenomenal blitzer. Can he turn into a rusher like Frankie Louvu? Frankie Louvu can be a rusher. He can be a blitzer. So I can't wait to see the evolution of Jayden McGee. And then he talked about being impressed with the intensity with the first week of camp. And now he wants to see them kind of switch over to situational football. And I talked about that earlier. He wants to put the team in these situations. And I think that's why we were so good in winning time last year. DQ has this team over-prepared for those moments. So when they come up, this team doesn't blink. I remember Jahan Dotson once saying that when this team is in those big moments, we always flinch. We always flinch. We always blink. This team last year, when they were put in those big time moments, we didn't flinch and we never, ever blinked, ever. And it's why we found ourselves winning a lot of those close games, being prepared for those late game moments and taking full advantage of them. And so I love that DQ is so detail oriented, puts this team in those positions so that when those opportunities present themselves in a game, they're ready. Then you get to Jayden Daniels and what he had to say. He said that one of the things he's seen himself get better at this year is playing situations. And what does that mean? He talked about playing in certain spaces, making certain decisions based off of the situation that you're in. For instance, he gave the example of if it's second down or it's first or second down, right? He's like being better on first or second down. Like, especially if it's second down, you just got a nice gain on first down and it's not there. Getting out of there, throwing it away, not taking a sack, like not setting the offense back, just understanding the situation, right? He said, understanding that I may be able to, escape a sack and make a play. He said, working on those second plays, I've gotten better at that, and keeping my eyes down the field. That's something that he's talked about this offseason, really working on keeping his eyes focused down the field, despite maybe a little trash around him, or, the pocket breaks down. He's got to get out of there instead of just tucking and running, making a play with his arm. And I told you that's the natural evolution of a quarterback with wheels, is that, you automatically want to take off because it's second nature. It just instincts kick in and you want to run and make something happen. But when you can start to see opportunities present themselves because they are reacting to you running and threatening the line of scrimmage, guys become wide open. Now you hit them and there's an even bigger game potentially off of that. So I think he's starting to understand that. He talked about, playing situations and being more comfortable doing that. And that's something he's gotten better at. He talked about leadership, and that was something that DQ was asked about with Jayden, and he said that, the communication has gotten so much better. And then, Jayden, he said that he's not necessarily like, you could tell he was uncomfortable with the media trying to portray him as like a leader, a vocal leader, because he's like, that's not really who I am necessarily. He's like, but I am a guy that upholds the standard. He's like, if we got a bunch of false start penalties, I'm gonna get another guy in there, right? He's like, but I also want guys to hold me accountable. Like, I look to Zach Ertz and the veterans and the Ecklers and the guys that are veterans on this team to hold me accountable if I'm messing up, But the standard is the standard, and we have to uphold that. And he said, I'm not a big rah-rah guy, as you know, but he's like, if something needs to be said, I'll say it. But at the end of the day, it's all about upholding the standard. You can see him growing in that regard. You can see him growing as a leader. Even his press conference, he's so much more comfortable than he was a year ago. You can just see that he's really starting to just take on the role of being the guy, right? Like, there's a lot of weight that comes with the burden of being the savior of a franchise. Like, I think he's starting to understand just the magnitude of what he's done and what he means to this community, this city, this fan base, and this organization. And I think he's starting to embrace all of that. And he's really getting comfortable in his skin here as a member of this organization and what his role is. And even when he sat down today, say, hey, what's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Like, just vibrant, like it was a good day, right? So he just had he just had this aura about him today, right? And then he talked about communication, kind of what I just talked about. The communication has been really good. And he talked about communicating with his teammates and how important that is. He had a couple of quotes. They asked him about Laramie Tunsil. He said, I love LT. So that was that. He was like, I just love Laramie Tunsil, period. Like, I'm so glad he's here. He makes my life a lot easier. I love him. And then he said, they asked him about, the relationship with him and Debo, and it's only been a week, but, how has that gone? He said, it's only been a week of camp. He was asking him like, that's it? It was like, yeah, just a week. He was like, man, he said, geez, it feels like it's been 3 weeks. So, they say the dog days of training camp, man. And if you've ever played football, at the high school level, camp is the worst. Summer camp, the camp, getting prepared for the season is the worst. It's hot as shit. We used to have 2-a-days. It was the worst. So, and it feels like one practice felt like 6. So I totally get where he's coming from. He talked about playing with Debo and the relationship that they have and they're building. And he said, Debo's a veteran. He is a professional. And he's like, the relationship that they're continuing to build and foster is great. And every time they get reps out on the field, they get better and better. And the communication gets better and better. And he's learning where to put the football for Debo. And that's why this time of the year is so important, right? You work on those things. And so when you get to the games, when they count, it's second nature, right? I know Debo is going to break this route and snap it off, and the ball is going to be right out here because that's what we worked on time and time again in camp. So you see that every day we keep hearing Debo with another touchdown, Debo with another touchdown. So that's probably been one positives, probably the lone positive to Terry not being there is it's more reps for Debo, more opportunities for Debo. So that they may be a little bit ahead of schedule because there's no Terry. That might be the only byproduct of Terry not being there that's positive. He talked about Jalen Lane. He said, man, he's a lot like me. He doesn't say much. He's a super quiet dude. So he says in that regard, we're very similar. But he said he may, you know, break out of that a little bit more as he gets more and more comfortable. But he's like, he adds an element to this offense. He's got speed. He's a guy that continues to grow in the offense. And he said, I'm excited to see, you know, how he continues to grow. He talked about Bill. He said, we call him Bill. Like, I'm struggling with these media members who just don't get it. It's not Bill Krosky Merritt. It's not Bill Merritt. It's just Bill. Damn. Can we just get this shit right? It's just Bill. Stop calling him Bill Merritt, Bill Krosky Merritt. It's just Bill. Period. It's not hard. He's like, yeah, he's really good. He's like, his cuts, he's got, you know, his one cut and go mentality, gets up the field, no wasted motion. He's like, he's impressive. He's a guy that, you know, we're really excited about. And, you know, we're going to see if he continues to get these opportunities, what he does with them. He's like, the big test for him is seeing what he does in the preseason, you know, in the joint practices. And that's going to be big for these running backs. And DQ's already said it. We've all talked about it. So, you know, Bill, I got a video coming out tomorrow. We got to talk about Bill, man. They asked Jayden about seeing the talent up close and personal, guys that he watched from afar, and did his viewpoint of them change? Was he more impressed when they got here, i.e. Zach Ertz, Von Miller, Laramie Tunsil, etc., Deebo Samuel? And he just listed all of those guys and was like, all of those guys were as advertised. They were even better in most instances. You see them from afar, then you see them here in person, and you're like, wow, I see why Von Miller's going to be, you know, a gold jacket guy. You see why Laramie Tunsil is one of the best tackles in football. You see why Von Miller is this, and Deebo is an all-pro, he said. So he said it's fun. And you know, when you think about it in that regard, I know we are the oldest team in the league, but when you think about all the guys and the talents and the accomplishments, and they still have something to contribute, it's a lot of fun seeing, you know, what we can actually put on the field and what we could actually do. He talked about his communication with Terry, obviously Terry being in the building, and the importance of getting him back on the field. So Jayden said, look, we continue to communicate like we always did. Nothing's really changed. You know, we talk about football, we talk about life, you know, so that remains constant with us. He said, but he acknowledged that I'd like to have him on the field. Like, we got banked reps, as DQ likes to talk about, but you know what helps you get better? More reps. And, you know, the sooner he gets back out there, you know, the better we can, you know, sharpen our tools and be more prepared for the start of the season. He's like, eventually we know that's going to get done. We ain't tripping about it, but, you know, I'd love to have him back on the field. So, you know, again, it's going to happen, but as we know, all of these things take time. It's a process. So he talked about challenging guys at practice on the defensive side of the football. You know, they said, hey, you been talking trash to guys. And he's like, I wouldn't call it trash talk as much as challenging these dudes. I'm going to challenge Bobby, and I'm going to challenge Mikey, and I'm going to challenge Joe Witt Jr. And he's like, Bobby is like a chess match. He's making a call. Now I got to make a check, and it's a chess match, right? And then he's like, you know, with Mikey and guys in the secondary, you want to get the best of them. They're trying to get the best of us. It's a lot of fun. And then he's like, I'm, you know, getting after Coach Witt, and he's trying to get after me, and we're just trying to make each other better. So that's pretty cool. And then he finished up the press conference by talking about the night and day difference where he is from this year at this point and and where he was last year at this point. Obviously, he was a rookie. I think he just had been given the keys to the whip last year at this point, because remember, we came into camp with the whole Marcus Mariota is, the starting quarterback taking some of the first team reps and whatnot. They had just given him the keys to the whip right before the maybe a week before the Jets joint practices. So this year, much different. He's more vocal. He is more comfortable, more confident in what he sees. He's like, I know what Cliff is looking for. He's like, I got more tools in my belt. He said, O-line Bobby Johnson basically is like, now you got more tools in your belt in terms of making checks in the run game and protections. And so he's like, I feel so much more confident. And when I approach the line of scrimmage and, what I see and what needs to be done. And yeah, he's like, I'm like, I am so confident he's going to kill it this year. Like, I've never been more confident about anything as a fan in my life. There aren't many things that you can just count on. I'm willing to bet anything that Jayden Daniels is an MVP candidate this year. That's how good he is. And mentally, I feel like year 2 with Cliff is so important. And he mentioned Bobby Johnson, the offensive line coach, and all of the things that they've done, right? He mentioned Brian Johnson. He mentioned Tavita Pritchard. He mentioned David Blau. He mentioned Cliff Kingsbury, and all the continuity of having those guys around for a second consecutive year and what that means. Jayden is going to murder the competition this year. Like, he is going to be so good. It's going to be so fun to watch him in year 2. To hell with all of this year 2 sophomore slump bullshit. He is going to be an absolute animal and assassin this season. I can't wait to watch. Bart Scott. Can't wait. Anyway, that was Jayden Daniels. And that was day 7 of training camp. Couple of sidebars. Luke McCaffrey continues to struggle. He had a drop today in the flats, wide open. I mean, I'm not down on him. I got to see it in the preseason. He's going to probably play a ton in the preseason this year. So I want to see him dominate is what I want to see. He may not be able to dominate, starting caliber competition ever in his career. We'll see, but I expect him to dominate the guys that he's going to be playing against in the preseason. Second team and third team guys, he's going to be out there. I need to see him get his shit off and get some confidence. That might be ultimately what sends his arrow pointing upward, is he just starts making some plays against some of these dudes that aren't going to be on rosters, and you get his shit off a little bit. And all of a sudden he remembers, this is why I was a 3rd round pick. So right now, I think he might be in his head a little bit, because he's had a few drops this camp. So we're going to see with him. I'm not one of those people that's going to pile on him and, talk about he's ass and, he can't play and this, that, and the third. We'll see. But I want to see his confidence come back. Anyway, I digress. So let's get to the comment section, and then we will get out of here. We got football tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We have football tonight. Are you excited? I most certainly am. Again, it's going to be trash football. Okay. Like, you're going to be excited for the kickoff. They're going to kick the shit off. And then when you realize Trey Lance and Hendon Hooker are playing and there are no starters on the field, and this is some bad football, you're going to quickly remember that this shit is awful, but it's what it represents, as I always like to say. It's not about the quality of the football that we're watching. It's just what it represents. Nike, thank you for being a member for 24 months. Happy 2-year anniversary, my guy. Who writes, in the new place for a month, things are great. I love it, man. I love to hear growth in your personal life. And I love when things are going well, man. I always talk about just happiness. That's the most important thing to me in life. It's just being happy, man. Being happy and getting to a place where you're comfortable and you're making moves. That's big. That's big time, man. So congratulations to you, and I'm glad things are going well, man. Navy Ramjet, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Navy Ramjet, writes, blessings to you and the family, Lou. Likewise. Looking forward to the Kings meetup, as am I, man. And as you just gave me the perfect opportunity to go ahead and to promote our live event August 24th at Crystal City Sports Pub. The day after the final preseason game, the Kings will ride for the first time together live and in color. At 5 o'clock, the doors will open. We'll get started shortly before 6. And we're going to party until. We're going to talk about the 53-man roster, give our projections for that, as that will be probably the biggest topic at that time, as we'll be fresh off of the final preseason game and them having to trim this roster down from 90 to 53. We'll also be giving our predictions for the season. We'll go through each game by game, and give you our thoughts on what's going to transpire. We're going to have a toast to the season. We're going to have interactions with people that are there live. We're going to have some interactions with people that are at home. And it's just going to be a ton of fun. Going to have a DJ. He's going to keep you guys entertained as well. This is going to be an event. This is going to be a vibe. You want to be in the building. August 24th, Crystal City Sports Pub. The Commanders Kings are going to be in full effect. I want you to be in the building when we turn up. Looking forward to meeting a lot of you for the second time, maybe the third time, or the first time, right? And I also want to give a shout out to the Hilltop RVA. They're in conjunction with this event, really helping us put this thing together. And this is going to be a dope experience. And we want you to be a part of it. Tickets are $45. We have less than 100 tickets remaining. As a matter of fact, we have less than 75 tickets remaining. Okay, half of the tickets are gone and accounted for already. So these tickets are moving fast. You do not want to wait. Get your tickets and solidify your spot in the building. We're looking forward to meeting all of you and having a great time. So, see you then. Don't meet me there. Beat me there. All right. Really appreciate you, Navy Ramjet, for giving me that opportunity to put that promo in there. He says, I feel our team speed has improved and our special teams will win us a few games. Our O-line will need time with 3 of the 5 new players. Yeah, and what's going to be interesting is they don't have time. The most ferocious D-line they may see all year may be week 1, right out of the gates. Pure speed, physicality with Dexter Lawrence, speed off the edge with Burns and Carter. And there's so many, they can come at you in waves. That Giants group is going to be tough. So we're going to need them to have their shit together right out of the gates week 1, whether that's Andrew Wiley at right tackle or Josh Connolly Jr. at right tackle, whether that's Sam Cosmi at right guard or it's Nick Allegretti at right guard. We need those guys to be ready because they're going to see some shit early in the season, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Max Crosby comes to town week 3. You don't have time to bullshit around. It's going to be tough right out of the gate. So the speed is definitely increased on this team without question. And I just talked about the linebacker position being faster. The receiver position is faster with guys like Jalen Lane being added to the mix. The running back position is faster just off the strength of Bill being here. Like, we've gotten faster as a team. Trey Amos adds and infuses speed along with Jonathan Jones to the cornerback room. Will Harris infuses some speed. That's a 4-3 guy at the safety position, right? Like, Tyler Owens was here last year, but if he's playing on defense, he adds speed. That's a 4-4 guy there. Like, this is a faster unit. This is what I envisioned when Dan Quinn showed up was fast and physical football on the defensive side, because that's what Dan Quinn coached defenses have always been, going all the way back to Atlanta. They weren't the biggest defense, but boy, did Deion Jones and Keanu Neal and Ricardo Allen, boy, did those dudes fly around and hit somebody. They were fun to watch. And so, Dallas obviously flying around, forcing turnovers. That's what I envision this being, and maybe we're working towards that. But this is a faster football team without question. Without question. Special teams may win us some games this year. You're not wrong. Special teams was really good for us last year. It was a strength of this team. Despite some of the kicking woes, we blocked kicks. We should have won the first Dallas game easily because we were so good on special teams in that game. The problem was we canceled out some of the goodwill on special teams with the dumb shit we did, whether it was missing the kicks, giving up the 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. Like, we canceled out all the good that we blocked a punt in that game. We blocked a field goal in that game. We did so many good things on special teams in that game, and we squandered it. Like, this special teams was phenomenal. Austin Eckler, I just think about the Cincinnati game and that return to start the second half that really set the tone for us to win that game. Like, special teams was so good for us last year. I could see it being even better this year, to your point. So, looking forward to the meetup, Navy Ramjet. Should be a lot of fun, my guy. Corin Smith, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Corin writes, hey, Lou, what's good? What's good with you, Corin? Says, the fellas held it down last night. Boy, we had a time last night. Do you think any Rivera players released would do well under DQ? I got my tickets, $724 a piece. I think you mean $824. Can't wait. Bart Scott. Can't wait. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. He says, any players released? I'm assuming you're talking about the guys that predated DQ and company, because if they released them, that means that they didn't see value in keeping them on the roster. So that answers your question. So I'm assuming you're talking about some of the guys that were here previously that maybe didn't overlap with DQ. Would those guys have been more successful if they had better structure, better coaching, et cetera, et cetera? That's an interesting question. I wonder if Cam Curl would have played well for them. He feels like a guy that would have fit really good defensively in their defenses because he was such a chess piece. They just never got to know Cam Curl, and he obviously didn't play here. They didn't re-sign him. So he would have been an interesting one. I think they would have done some things with Chase Young and Montez Sweat if those guys had been here. I think they would have. They would have had, if that D-line was here with this coaching staff, they would have gotten way more out of those guys. Chase Young might have actually turned into what we thought he was going to turn into. Montez Sweat would have been really good. This defense that was supposed to be good would have been a lot better. Like, I think about a guy like oh man, I can't think of his name. I can see his face. The linebacker with the mullet that was here that went to Pittsburgh. I think he could have done some good things in a DQ Joe Witt system, just off his athleticism and what he brought to the table. So I think there were a few guys that they had some real talent, and if they had a better infrastructure, better coaching, could have been solid football players. But Cole Holcomb, thank you, Salman Ali, Enrique, Cole Holcomb, thank you. I think guys like that could have thrived in a DQ, Joe Witt Jr. system. There were some guys here that could play. I think a younger Kendall Fuller, would have been really good in the scheme. Smart football player. They could have done a lot with him. Guy can take the ball away that has good ball skills. Yeah, I think he could have been good. So there was definitely some guys that were here previously that had talent that could have probably been really good, but obviously it is what it is. Corin Smith, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? 824, my bad. I knew what you meant. We'll be in the DMV going back to New York City. All right. So I love it. I just love the support, man. We can't thank you guys enough, man. I've had people tell me I'm coming from Arizona, I'm coming from Florida, I'm coming from North Carolina. It's that we appreciate the love, man. We really truly do. I always tell y'all this, you know, we've cultivated this family-like environment. Like, we've created this space that it's unlike any other. Like, and I mean that. Like, it's unmatched. You won't find the kind of community that we've created here on the Louie T Network, and just within the structure of what we've done, and, you know, extending that to the Commanders Kings. It's just different around here. It kind of feels like it's almost like an extension of DQ and the brotherhood that they've built. Like, that's what we have here. And y'all make it so, you know, and so I can't thank y'all enough. So looking forward to meeting you. Appreciate the sacrifice coming from New York, making the trek down. It's all love, man. We really appreciate y'all. So Jason Rogers, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Uncle Jay, writes, F it, I'm pulling up too. I thought I saw you up there. I thought I saw your name up there on the ticket list, but I wasn't sure. But that's what I'm talking about, man. That's what we need, man. I need to meet a lot of y'all in person. You know, we talk all this shit. It almost feels like we know each other. Well, let's finally meet each other. This is gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of y'all and putting faces to some of these names. So it's gonna be really dope, man. Looking forward to it. And yeah, pull up. That's what we need, right? So that was the last super chat. Really appreciate y'all. And y'all gonna see me again tonight because we got football. Dun, 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 dun. Even though it's like more Sunday night, I think. But it's a Hall of Fame game. And it's gonna be ass, but it's what it represents. Chargers, Lions. Should be a ton of fun. Just seeing football on the old television screen. And we'll be live after that game. Again, it's more about what it represents, less about the actual game. Although I am interested to see Hendon Hooker. I actually thought he would make a solid NFL quarterback. Really haven't seen him because Jared Goff has been so good. I wonder what he's up to. Guess we're going to get an opportunity to see. So I think he played well in the preseason last year too. So interested to see him a little bit. But outside of that, not really much to see here. But I will be live after the game tonight. Looking forward to it. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Day 7 of training camp in the books. Commanders have one of their best practices of the training camp period thus far. A lot of good things coming out of practice today. I think they're off tomorrow, or it's a walkthrough, something of that ilk. But we'll be back with more Commanders content tomorrow as well. But you'll see me tonight. We got football. We'll talk about it. Until then, I'm signing off. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Until next time. Y'all be easy. Peace.